So this is the work. The Bhagavad Gita is clear about this from the very beginning. Dejection. See, dejection is not depression. Dejection is not despair. Depression is tamas in the human system. Not being able to get what it wants, not being able to come into existence as its desires, as its rajas would want. It has defeated itself, or it's been defeated. And then despair is the rajas component of depression. It is the injection of rajas, which is resisting its depression, creating despair. Now, despair is getting into the vicinity of dejection. And dejection, however, comes from a different place. It's an anguish of the entrapped soul, your being, that has given up on the possibility of breaking out of the bondage it finds itself in. And what is that bondage? Who is the jail keeper? We are. You are. Unwittingly. Because you fell into the thread and the flow of the collective ignorance, always striving to get or have, or to even be. So dejection is a poignancy of what would be depression and despair. The poignancy carries the power of your awakened soul. Otherwise, the soul is just obscured, lying in a corner under its dirty rags with no possibility of coming into existence. But when we awaken, it realizes, comes out of its corner and then realizes its predicament. So awakening is not just the awakening into the vast wonders and possibilities of a divine life, but in the first thing it encounters is all that which resistance impose. So the spiritual path actually happens in a poignant moment of recognition of its bondage. And it has a power in that, because the self-awareness lies and draws its strength from the being. And the being is exhausted because the ego has taken it over and uses it for its own purposes. So it has no power or authority. But in the moment of awakening, a greater power comes accessible to it. And it objects. It cries. It wails, but the wail behind the wail is almost like a demand, an insistence to let me be, let me exist, let me come out. If you look deeply in yourself, all moments of despair, all moments of defeat, all moments of hopelessness and powerlessness are access point to that cry. They are not yet the fully articulate expression of the being itself, but they're the human components, the matching in our content of collective error that they're burdened with. So very often, dejection is evidence of true awakening. But more often than not, it's not recognized, it's defeated, it's ignored, and it retreats under its dirty rags in the corner of its cage. So there is a peril that's been going on most of our lives that we have been living on top of, ignoring, denying, obscuring, distracting ourselves, trying to find a nectar outside because we've lost access to it inside, constantly feeding, eating, drinking, seeking affirmation, to be seen, to be heard, to have it your way so that you can feel held, supported, and nurtured. Even the cry of a baby carries the wounding of all the previous babies and all the mothers and all the abandoned children and all the children who didn't make it through the 9 months of pregnancy. It is the anguish of not being able to come into existence. We each carry this. So when we get to understand what dejection is, that the moments when you are in dejection, you're in the pivot point, the center point of what allows us to be self-aware. You're at the center point of the very thing that in itself is the most precious thing in existence that has been given no voice, no language, no place to come into existence. So this is the cry. And this is the cry that brought me back from my endless samadhis. Each time I would come out, it was in response to the cry that I cannot rest as long as this is there.